he consumable his previous lifetime in and out of prison. Later Michael Balogun solved he requested to research to be an artist at one of the planet's largest prestigious AMD schools. Could the outwardly unfeasible vanity be the catalytic he necessary to rotate his lifetime about? As he sat one in his jail cage, thought on all the chances same D messed up, Michael Balogun done a judgment, if he couldn't job out which to do in his lifetime, how overnight, he would hover oneself. Balogun closed his eyes and began remember scenes of his lifetime. The dad who neglected the household. The mom who was shipped to jail for behavior drugs. The day he was undertaken in thoroughness and his at first forays in road criminality. His own prison sentences. The opportunities to go direct he had squandered. And later a mind flashed in his reason. Operating. He could try operating. To nobody who had never met Balogun, it would include seemed a wild ridiculous vanity. But he's one he ultimately implemented. Recent year he graded of the King Academia of Drama Art, Council, one of the planet's largest prestigious AMD schools. And while he took his location on phase for the at first period at the Domestic Theatre's new manufacture of Macbeth near such a famous actors as Rory Kinnear and Anne-Marie Duff, he marveled at how far he had go. I would never include imaginary myself there, he mined to oneself. Balogun grew up in Kennington, southward London, in an extraordinary household. My dad wasn't about, my mum was departure on feast a many, travelling a many, and it was me and my sisters in the building, one, he says. Down there were ever human beings upcoming in and of. One of his previous memories was observer his mom claim in two men. As they leftward, Balogun saw one of them put a gun in his waist. The largest trauma time of his infancy began while he was elderly on 7 or 8, in his mom's detention. Not one can see following a kid superior rather than their own mom, he says. It was love the end of the planet for me. She was condemned to 15 years in jail, but once the authorities didn't understand how Michael and his two sisters had been leftward one in the building to parry for themselves. The three of them were utilized to it, he says. His older sibling took thoroughness of the household work and sort out the household's benefits. We type of fare stored it how it was whenever mum went on feast. One date, a year or two after, Balogun bring down ill at high school. I recall the teaching staff proverb, about, we're departure to urge yours mother, and I recall creature love, no, don't worry about, he's penalty. Ultimately they treated out his mom was in jail. Public services were warned. Balogun and his sisters were undertaken in thoroughness and later went to dwell in an ante. Following he begun to go off the railway track. His penal career began in Sainsbury's, wherever he went to rob donuts. I didn't very include lot cash and I fare necessary to eat occasionally, he says. By the period he begun second high school, same D fall in a mob of some southward London younger generation in hard backgrounds. I begun off theft, later I begun robbing human beings on the road, handbags and all how material. Hooliganism human beings. Of down there he progressed to marketing hemp at high school, and by the period he was 16 or 17 he was behavior heroin and fracture crack cocaine on the gateway of Kentish City, Polar London and Portsmouth. While he acquired his at first jail verdict, 3 part year for ownership of heroin in intention to delivery, prison thick felt love a rites of passageway. But he yet found the expertise deep trauma. How at first overnight, while the doorway closing over you and you understand how thou fare in a chamber, thou departure to be there before you complete yours verdict, how's while fact kicks to. Jail was a college for criminality. He was concluded once again quickly following his produce. Following he was released other period, Balogun solved to try departure direct. He attached for a job in a top road banking or, at his interviewing, he boasted how he was a large seller who could sell any food, not mention, of year, wherever same D purchased his turnover expertise. Amazed by his trust, the Payne proposed him a work. He treated on a teller's plow marketing mortgages and wrapped accounts. Or, real to his speech, he was nice at it. The was up the letter of credit crackle wherever if you went in a banking, they'd propose you all the material, he says. Thanks to Balogun's efforts, the branches shooting up the business's turnover league spreadsheet. I was subsequent. I was manufacturing how branches wherever I was work the quantity 1 branches in how region. His ability didn't go undetected and he was proposed a promote at else branches. Later, one date, Michael was undertaken towards. They named me in, which were you making among the period and the period. Such were the times I'd been in jail. They'd found of. Balogun had never acknowledged to his patronage how same D serviced period in prison. He was sacked. His sackcloth destroyed his trust in his capacity to conduct downward a direct work. I fair solved to do which I knew top, that was marketing drugs, and criminality. Quickly following, he was in a nightclub in a team of friends while he got in an quarrel in else team. Several guys stretched out a cannon, and since I had a gun on me it all got a bit feverish and it ended up creature a skirmish. I ended up hard to fire who. Present, at the age of 34, Balogun says he can't trust he could do such a item. Apparently at the period I knew which I was making was incorrect, he says. Yet I ever justifiable it since I was love, the is the lifetime I've lived. The is the backdrop I've go of. The is which we make. Yet looking behind now I understand how which I did was silly and foolish and ugly. He's a big pity. Balogun was trapped and condemned to 9 years in jail for his portion in the occurrence. Behind within, at HMP Blantyre Building, Kent, Balogun solved to rotate his lifetime about. He requested to be a cook. I utilized to look Gordon Ramsay's cuisine nightmares religiously each 1 week, and a amiable jail official offered he use for a learning location at the Ringing, a mercy-run small restaurant within HMP top downward, Surrey. It now operates 3 more than restaurants at imprisonment about England and Wales. Balogun gained a public catering NVQ down there, and became acceptable for date release job to the end of his verdict. He was said a job had been found for him in a location same D never heard of up, at council, in the AMD High School's cafeteria. Balogun was impressed, there would be a opportunity to whetstone his skills and earn money several cash. Advantage, I mind down there's perhaps departure to be several appealing female float about, if I'm fair, he says. Apparently, possessing been in jail a few year, you aware. He was nerve while he arriving at council, and his period down there didn't go so at first. Balogun was said how his plant chopping was too sluggish and he was relegated to serving drinks at the pub. I was a bit sullen since I was love, I didn't go her to job on a pub, I came there to find out to prepare, he says. I requested to be a cook and had all these ideas and ambitions on discovery up a small restaurant. Later one day the officer requested if he requested to look one of the acting executed by council students. Balogun, who had never been within a theater besides on a travel to look Star Courier while he was at initial high school, jumped at the prospect. He was ushered in the hall. The act was action for action. Whenever I mind of Shakespeare, I fair mind of, love these folks fleeing about in old clothing, he says. But there was a contemporary dress production, set in this day America. I was love, about, they're making New York accents and he's set in New York and human beings are operating rather modern and regular. Else Insight was a manufacture of Quicksilver coat, Philip Ridley's contentious act on a position apocalyptic London. Balogun was mesmerized. He's one of such things wherever you look a act and you overlook on lifetime. You are fair down there and within the item, observer all occur, and it fair conducted thou. While he went behind to jail how overnight, Balogun raved on which same D scene. He took his boyfriend and comrade prisoner Marvin via the story, operating out scenes and impersonating the letter. Which affected Marvin, yet, was the bright way in that Balogun had recounted the act. Marvin said him, I believe you could be an artist, you aware, bruv. Since thou really drama, the way you speak stories. You get in it, you miss oneself. Balogun wasn't confident. Certainly creature and artist wasn't for the likes of him. He spurred all the to the behind of his reason. And in any case, Balogun was on to squandering his chances for repayment once again. Take a portable telephone in jail was rigorously prohibited. Yet, says Balogun, I was creature a bit hungry and I requested to say to a pair of friends. As he refundable of counsel one day he tested to scoundrel a telephone in his wardrobe. A jail official spotty it or, direct off, all his preference were annulled. No more than day produce, no more than counsel. No more than outdoor jail, Class D statute, instead of, a transmission to close facility at HMP Elmley, Kent. I believe down there's thing in me, the personality destruction, he says. That has happened to me a lot in my lifetime. Messing things up, always. To manage in the civilization upheaval of back to a close jail, Balogun was smoke the artificial cannabinoid, seasoning. It messes up yours chief a many, he says. I was possessing psychopathic episodes. It was at the low ebb how Balogun gave oneself a overnight to solve how to do thing of his lifetime, or murder oneself. As he closed his eyes and went above memories in his chief, he abruptly done the protection among which such about him had been proverb. Marvin, his ex-comrade prisoner, wasn't the at first man who had offered he might include an ability for the phase. Same D befriended several of the AMD students, several of whom had requested him to practice their channel in them, and one had offered he was nice quite to do it professionally. At high school, he withdrawn, his teaching staff said him he was a nature singer. Up same D been vulnerable as an former convict, his boss at the banking had praised his power and charism. It all done feeling to him now, operating was his top opportunity of repayment. As quickly as how mind came in my chief, I fair thick felt love thing had been raised away, he says. Or I knew, intuitively, within of me, knew how was the law item to make. The following date, a counselor came to see him in his cage on his psychotic. I'm penalty currently, he told to her. He said her on his plans to be an artist, or, by overlap, it rotated out the counselor was a portion-time AMD tutor. She began earning him acting every 1 week to recite, Noel Craven, Shakespeare. He didn't know Tsar Lear the at first period he recited, but he was established to find out. And as he begun to do feeling of which he was read, he thick felt approved, how he could very do the and which superior location to do it rather than counsel. He was yet in pin in students down there, who said him how hard it was to get in. Every year 5,000 would use and just 28 would be acknowledged. Following his produce, his definition to get in counsel hadn't reduced. But though in the hardly occasion how he got in, how could he lift the £28,000 year charges? Same D never heard of undergraduate loans. He mind, I'll go behind to which I aware top, that is narcotic dealing, for a beat, rescue up several cash. So he was marketing drugs once again, besides the period, near his illegal industry activities, Balogun was take Shakespeare classes run by a homelessness mercy. But one day once again, the police force trapped up in him, and he ended up behind in jail. It was the definitive wake-up urge he necessary how he had to abandon criminality for nice. 6 months after, Balogun was liberated once again, and he began using direct off to AMD schools. For his counsel listening, Balogun chose the St. Crispin's Day. Speaking of Henry V. while he was junior, he was a bit of a swindler. And later he has to beat Tsar, so he has to move up to the platter. The is an emotion, hot speaking. I recall read it and thought, I can do the A. He executed it as although he was speaking to his counterparts in jail. We few, we lucky few, we gang of brothers, for he for day how sheds his bloodstream in me shall be my sibling, be he ne'er so disgusting, the day shall delicate his state. Once following the listening, his telephone rang. A deducted quantity. Counsel inviting to let him aware how same D made. His cardiac began beaten more rapid. We'd love to propose you a location on the BA in operating, a vote downward the link said him. He lay on the story of his mother's cuisine and cried. The Monthly, as he walked out in front line of an auditorium at Domestic Theatre for the At First period, and saw Duff and Kinnear on phase near him, Balogun mind on the epiphany in the jail cage how driven him down there. Apparently occasion do influence thou, and events how occur in yours lifetime, but down there comes a period in lifetime wherever you requirement to get liability, he says. I firmly trust how yours imaginative is strong, and how's wherever the sorcery is. If you include an concept, a motive to do thing, fair do it, since thou'll be amazed which you can make.